Welcome back to Vic's Projects, everyone. I hope you're well. Now, if you've seen the last few episodes, they've all been concentrated on this Jaguar Mark II, trying to get it to the point where it's a really good daily driver. And we're kind of at that point. Like, yeah, using it all the time. Now I've got the heater in, we've got the lights upgraded. It's been fantastic. Really happy to keep using it. And keep using it, I will. Which means we're not actually going to be taking this thing apart much over the next couple of months. What we're actually going to do is wheel this one out and bring in the Mercedes SL. So yes, this poor old girl has had to sit under a cover out over most of the winter rather than being nestled up in a garage. Now, not ideal. The BMW Isetta is in pieces in there, so I just didn't have room. It's been under a cover, and do you know what? I've been really impressed with that cover. So not a sponsored link or anything like that, but I'll put a link to them down below because yeah, it's been fantastic. Everything underneath is dry. It doesn't smell damp in here. So yeah, I've been really impressed with that one. Now, why are we pulling it in to get some work done? So we're in, what is it, January time now. So we've got a few months to get this thing ready for the summertime when that starts to roll around in the UK. And now I know these cars are supposed to, you know, waft around a bit. They're a bit of a lazy Grand Tourer type thing, but the driving experience in this is ridiculous. Those bushes are completely gone. We'll probably see once we get underneath just how bad they are, but yeah, that needs sorting. So that's the plan. Get it ready for the summertime. Give the underneath the full treatment. So powder coating, we're gonna do all the underseal, we're gonna do bushes, ball joints, all that sort of stuff. So without further ado, let's do a swap with the Jag. Well, after so long of having the Jag in this spot, it's really weird to sit here and look at the Merc now here. But I am super excited to get working on it because I've never actually done any proper work on Mercedes like this. So it's going to be a nice learning experience for me as well. Now, before I poured it in, I took it around the block a few times, warmed up the engine oil, and I just gave it an oil change. Of course, in doing so, obligatory, I got oil everywhere, but never mind, that's all sorted now. Did the spin-off filter as well. So now I've got it on jack stands, I'm going to pull the wheels off, go over underneath with a wire brush on all the nuts and bolts that I could find and cover them in penetrating fluid. Leave it for a few days and then, hopefully, fingers crossed, it shouldn't fight me too much. With that done, and now having taken probably about 500 photos underneath here, so I know how it all goes back together in a month or so time, we are now ready to start tearing into it. As with anything, there's a bit of an order here, and a big shout out to Mike's Mercs, who's actually an SL expert based here in Bristol as well. So high five, Mike. Thank you ever so much if you're watching. Maybe I'll catch up with you at some point. So thanks to him, I know roughly what I'm doing here, but still, I've never worked on these cars, so it's a bit of a learning curve for me. First things first, we're going to take out this shock and the front anti-roll bar. And fingers crossed, all those nuts and bolts play nicely. So far not so bad, anti-roll bar and shocks out. However, these drop links, that tube there is rusted solid onto that bolt, and there is no way I'm getting that out nice and easy. So hopefully that can just stay there and I can get him out on the bench. This shock came out nice and easy, but the other shock was misbehaving. So as soon as they're going in the bin anyway, I decided to get a bit brutal rather than muck about and try and take it out nicely. Anyway, with those shocks now out of the way, I can start taking out the steering arm, which allows me to then to remove the brake and get that up and out the way so we can start thinking about taking tension off of this big spring. Now it's important to note that those shocks have the bump stop for the front suspension. So you need a jack underneath when you're taking those shocks out. Otherwise this will slam down and start hitting on this subframe. Now it can rest on the subframe, so we're going to let it down nice and gently off the jack now, but something to be mindful of. With that little lot removed and out of the way, it's time to start thinking about how we're going to get this lower wishbone out, which means the two connections either side at the rear need to come out, and they've got some big old bolts and nuts on them. The rear ones don't cop too much of the elements, but the front ones get all of it. So yeah, not looking forward to this one. I'm going to start with the rear. That should be the easy one. Oh, yes. Oh man, I hate this bit. So it's time to start releasing the pressure on this spring. You might have seen in a previous clip that I tried putting spring compressors on here, but they didn't sit very well and they felt even more dodgy than just trying to release the pressure using the jack at the bottom. So slowly catch your monkey, and fingers crossed we won't take our arm off. Yes. Well, with that all done and all my fingers still intact, we can now get on to dropping the subframe. Now the subframe actually supports the engine, which is why we've got this big old engine brace up the top here, holding it from the top. There's a little jacking point just there. For me, this is a bit sketchy. So I've got a jack underneath just supporting the sump of the engine. Now we can't leave that there. We do have to support the engine from the top, because as you'll see, when the subframe comes down, it'll end up getting stuck on whatever we're supporting it from the bottom. So we'll drop the subframe down. We'll then pull it out the way, move that jack out the way once we've confirmed that everything is holding nicely. Pull the subframe out of the way and then support the engine from the bottom. I don't want to take any chances. This is a big old heavy lump. I've also put the bottom wishbones all back in just temporarily for now, so it's all together and the whole lot comes down as one. You're probably asking yourself at this point, what about those ball joints, Vic? We'll get to those. I'm not expecting anything to go well when it goes for those. We might have to use some severe force. Anyway, that's a later problem. Let's get to this one now. Well, no real dramas there, and this subframe is actually in really good shape. So let's keep the momentum going and start tearing her apart. Another job that I've been putting off, which is getting these ball joints out. And for anyone who's done this job before, you'll know that just putting a socket on there is no good, because that's going to spin and not release.
Little did Vic know, he was talking absolute bollocks.
They've got a hole in the top for an Allen key, except on ours, of course, that hole is all rusted up, top and bottom, and no chance whatsoever of opening it up to get the Allen key in. So I'm going to resort to a nut splitter to get that one off, and if that doesn't work, it's going to have to be a cutting disc. I really hate being destructive. Well, I'm surprised at how little all of that fought me to get off. And actually, what good condition it all is, considering its age. I think this car has been looked after really well in its life. So, I probably shouldn't jinx it, because I've still got bits and pieces to remove, but I think most of the heavy lifting has now been done. I got lucky with those ball joints. Turns out they were in there tight enough that I could just spin off the nuts and then crack them off with the jaws. Yeah, so let's keep moving, let's keep tearing things down. I've got myself a load of new goodies so that we can start, when we pull everything out, we can check to make sure we've got that part. I will go through how I sourced all these parts a bit later. I don't know if I've got everything, so I'm going to match it all up first before I send anything off or put things into bags or boxes, just in case I need to order a few more bits. With the wishbones done, we're now moving on to the subframe. Now clearly this all needs cleaning up. I'll get someone else to do that whilst they powder coat it. But before we send it off to them, I want to talk to you about these mounting points just here. Now this is where the wishbone, the bottom wishbone mounts to, and there was actually a design flaw with these subframes just here. Now these parts here, these little ears, are not quite strong enough to take all the load, and they have been known to crack. So there is a little kit that you can get to effectively brace all of this up. Digging around, I can't quite tell if this was a manufacturer recall or just a recommended action that was done in the third party. Maybe someone can tell me down below in the comments, but this is certainly a thing. I'll put some pictures up so you can see the results of what happens when you don't install this kit. Now, it's just some bits of metal, some big fat bits of metal. I could spend a load of money getting the ones that are already laser cut, weld them straight in. However, I've got some offcuts somewhere of some pretty thick gauge steel. So I think I'm just going to make up my own bracing plates, given that these have already lasted, there is literally no signs of cracking on these, so maybe this car has had a really easy life. But either way, it makes complete sense while we're here to make that upgrade. So let's get into that one. So the seat's all strengthened up. I'm pretty pleased with how those came out, and my welding's getting to the point where it's acceptable. So, great, that's that one done. We'll move on to our last strip down job, which is the front hubs. So with everything apart and ready to go to the powder coaters, I thought I'd just check to make sure all the new bits that I'd ordered were the right ones. Now, this wasn't quite so easy as I hoped it would be. Take my old Jag for example, there's exploded diagrams on the net. You just go to SG Barrett and they've got it all through. You can click through, find your parts, easy peasy. I couldn't find anything like that. If you know of somewhere for these old SLs, then let me know in the comments down below. I'd love to find it. So, looked around, I couldn't really find anything. I did find one thing though, so a catalogue from a company in the US. Now I would have used them because you gave me a super handy catalogue. However, I'm in the UK, you're in the US, didn't really make sense. So if you're in the US, a link down in the description below so you can check them out. So, yeah, they had a catalogue with all the Mercedes part numbers for most of the bits of the front end, not so much on the back end. So I used that, put that into Autodoc. I would say they're here in the UK, but I think they're actually in Germany, but they ship to the UK anyway. They're normally super cheap for all sorts of stuff. Putting in the Mercedes part number, picked up all the Febby parts as well. So rather than pay like big Mercedes prices, the Febby stuff is really good. And it comes with all new lovely hardware. So super excited about that. Cool, so got all our parts. Let's get this stuff off to the powder coaters and carry on with our jobs. So with that lot away for powder coating, we've got to get ready for when it all comes back nice and shiny. And that means tackling the inner wheel wells. So someone has come in here before and sprayed some really heavy duty, it's like textured rubberized paint in here to keep everything all nice, and it's done a fantastic job. Actually, most of it is still really good. There's a couple of areas though which have cracked along the way, probably because they were already a little bit rusty before they sprayed the stuff on. So I've got two options. I could either take all of it off and put it all back on. Well, don't really want to do that. One, it's a load of work. Two, most of it is still really good. And three, this is, it looks like it's been professionally done. So they've got, you know, the proper airlines, really good quality stuff. And all I've got is some rattle can version of it, which I've never used this before. Hopefully it's going to be pretty good, but I don't think it's going to be as good as that stuff. So option two is to just tackle those bits where it's come away and touch it all up. And that's what we're going to do. Now the fun bit begins, because now everything is no longer rusty and covered in grime and horrible. It's all beautifully powder coated. So you can see I've done the wishbones and the uprights as well in silver, much like I did on the Jaguar Mark II. Why? I think it looks quite cool. It's a nice little touch. I know it's not standard, but it's my car and I like it that way. So that's the way she's going. Now, before we get too excited and just start throwing all the bits together, we've got a couple of things to talk about. The first one is this subframe is all hollow. So we need to put some cavity wax in there to keep that all nice and not rotting from the inside out. And the second thing is, when we put all these bushes back in, you need to grease them up, but you can't just use any old grease, like your standard grease is all petroleum based. That will actually eat the rubber, so that's no good. You need proper rubber grease. Now most of these are like silicone based or something like that, but yeah, make sure you get the right ones. So, oh, this is the fun bit. I'm looking forward to this. Close. So in. Oh, I think I'm not too high now. Let's try. There we go. Cool. So go. All right.
This bit goes down like this.
Oh.
On it.
Yep, and I'll go in there. Well, up a bit. There we go. And then we need to put our nuts on.
And then
Big nut on the bottom, little nut on the top.
which one? The blue one's on the bottom.
Oh no. So she's all together looking lovely with a little help from my neighbour's son. So thank you very much there. I got it installed myself. That was kind of tricky, but doable. Yeah, just using those blocks of wood just to help ladder it all the way up. What I did find out, however, is you need to jack the engine slightly so that you can jiggle it around to get it to seat and the bolts to take on those engine mounts. Otherwise, you'll end up cross-threading them. Ask me how I know, and that's a whole world of pain because now you've got to take it all apart and then put it back in again. But oh well, that's all done. As you can see, our next job is getting these whopping great springs in here. I'm really not looking forward to this. I haven't got exactly the proper tools that you'd want. So yeah, we're gonna have to see how we go. We might end up having to just abort and go and buy those tools. We'll find out in a bit. So clearly, rusty old springs, they can't go back in when everything else is looking lovely. So got some nice new ones, some nice new rubber boots as well. So let's get into it. Yeah, I know, that was kind of inevitable. So while we wait for all the right tools to arrive, we've got plenty of other jobs to get on with. So we're going to kick off with the steering. Well, there is no more parts left on my floor, which means the front end is all back together and good to go. Yes. So when did we start this? We started this in January time. It's now beginning of April. So yeah, work, evenings, the detour side quest to get the exhaust headers, that all took some time, but we're here to go now. What I really wanted to do was also get the back end done, but I did say that I wanted to get this car out and ready to use for the summer. So seeing as that's rolling around, I think rather than do the back end, we'll save that for another time. And it's time to get the wheels back on and take this cover off. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Remember, you've still got to do the thing. What other thing? The thing. You did tell the people about the thing, right? No, I didn't tell them about that thing. Well, you know you can't drive it without sorting the thing. Oh,